guarantees of the natural moral law. It is for all men. It will not change because man never changes in that sense of his essence and nature. Okay? And therefore, it is applicable or obligatory for all. So this is what you call the natural moral law. Okay, but moral law has an analogous dimension aside from the natural one, the natural moral law, because we know that in the Bible, in the Jewish people, there is also a law that was revealed for man, to man. An immediate actually, they seem to be immediate conclusions of the law that we have in our hearts. No? The man in the boondocks, for example, they detect or they know that killing is bad. No? They smell it, even if they are away from civilization. No? To take the life of another brother, another neighbor of theirs is difficult, or to accept, no, is unacceptable. Now God, because he knew that the judgment of man is clouded and the natural moral law, likewise, is not easy to discern with his own strength, he gave us the 10 Commandments. He outlined for us that natural moral law. So the natural moral law was also revealed, divinely revealed, or posited. Posited, it is also a positive law. Divine positive law. So there's some natural moral law written in our hearts, but since God was so good, He wanted things clear, He has given us this same outline, the 10 Commandments, and it is in that sense a moral law that is positively, divine positively revealed. Jesus Christ comes and He will give us, as I mentioned earlier, power, strength to follow mysteriously in the soul the life of grace. Primarily, it will be that grace which will be the new law of love. And then secondarily, what He will give us is the new law, understood and outlined also the Beatitudes. Blessed are, and to follow Him in order to be a good Christian, He already has outlined the path for us, the Beatitudes. So this is a divine positive law as well, seen from this perspective. Since the society, on a third level, it is also a moral law. And so society will have to organize herself. Man is a social being. They can definitely have rules and regulations for the common good of that society or association or that nation. And so there is a state or state law that also outlines or makes obvious the precepts of the natural moral law to organize the state and also for the good of man in his perfection, in his journey towards perfection. So this is what you call the civil law in broad strokes. Since the church is also a society, God's people also has to organize herself. There also is that another these are two ways of seeing the moral law as dictated by society. The church, or ecclesiastical laws, is another branch because the church is a society. And this is codified, and there are precepts also in this. I have to clarify this in the next slide. Okay, but before that, before I clarify this in the next slide, I've been talking for around 30 minutes already. I wanted to wake you up, and I wanted to know if you, at least 10 are with me. Can you type B in the chat box if you are with me? B, 1, thank you. 3, 4, okay, B, somebody was shouting even. Thank you, at least 10 are with me. Thank you for typing and participating that way. I really hope we could go back in the future to a live one so that I could see you and I could see you sleeping. Maybe you wake up when I ask you to, sorry, when I ask you to type. Okay, let's continue. So civil laws are important. Civil laws are important. And they interpret also the natural moral law as the state has provided it. According to Saint Thomas Aquinas, this is Saint Thomas Aquinas, a great thinker for us, who has interpreted the philosopher Aristotle, promulgating and making explicit the demands of the natural moral law needed to make possible and regulate adequately the life of its citizens is the purpose of the civil law. So it makes life politically organized well. And we have to follow all the civil laws in general, okay, in broad strokes. Okay, we have to follow everything that the government has established because it's for the common good. If the government wants us, for example, to use the right lane every time we drive, we cannot go to the left. Otherwise, there will be chaos. Okay, we will be bound to follow the law, and that one, I already am hinting that the how they call this relationship, that one will make us true to society's life, and they're also free. If I cannot go to the left, does it make me less free? No. Because going to the left is a crime, it makes chaos, and that's not freedom. That's sin against society. Okay? Good. Now, St. John Paul II, in a document which you are familiar with because in the previous class, we have mentioned this also, Evangelium Vitae, the Gospel of Life. He mentioned that civil laws principally guarantee to us, some spell it guarantee, peace and security, freedom, justice, the safeguarding of fundamental rights of the person and public. So they all are important. Okay, we have to follow them, the civil laws. Okay, now if, however, now there is a contradiction between that civil law, which was aimed to interpret or to give to us the concretization of the natural moral law, then it is called unjust. Okay, so if a law, a civil law, is unjust, for example, it prohibits morally good actions, it harms, in fact, the common good, it was promulgated illegally, or it is leading to distribution that is not inequitable, that is not equitable, meaning the right proportion for each, then we are not obliged to follow it. If unjust, then as human beings, we have all the right to disobey. So, poor spelling. Or cite our conscientious, because of our conscience, conscientious objection. For example, this happens in the US when a person, for example, is asking the doctor to abort a child. In some states, you can file for a conscientious objection. I cannot do that because it's against my conscience. Okay? It's against my faith, for example, or my conscience. And so the state allows you, okay, then another should do that abortion, etc., etc. Okay, so civil laws are very important, but keep in mind that it is also possible because of the sin of man, because of his tendency towards evil, because of the lack of knowledge or understanding of the natural moral, because of his state of imperfection, there could be scenarios that they are also unjust. Okay, how about ecclesiastical laws? Can you clarify what are these, Father? Well, since God wants society for us to follow him, it is codified. So there's a code of canon law that was promulgated, for example, in 1983. Okay, also in the previous one, in the earlier part of the century, that has some rules and regulations for us, faithful of the church. And we have to also know it, at least the most essential ones. Actually, when we were discussing marriage, I was mentioning some in the code of canon law. Okay. Now, precepts are 5. These are what you call rules of the church, so that the law, although it is an ecclesiastical one, towards worship, towards God, are protected. And there are 5 man-made, yes, in that sense, because it's the church that established this. but also connect to the divine because the church is for God. Precepts that you have to know by heart. Okay, and what are these precepts, Father? First, you have to attend Mass, entire Mass on Sundays and holy days of obligation. What are those holy days of obligation? December 25, January 1, December 8. Okay, obviously, right now, it is impossible. It is impossible to attend the entire Mass. So this obligation, I mean, in the church, what is obligatory in the strictest sense are those that are possible. Okay, since you cannot attend the entire Mass, perhaps this obligation also is well understood by the Lord. You cannot fulfill this precept. The entire Mass, meaning you have to be there, to be there in the church. Okay, second precept. You have to confess your mortal sins at least once a year when in danger of death and when needed in order to receive communion. Third, and they are pertaining to the sacraments. Third is to receive communion at least once a year during Easter. So maybe you're surprised. It's not an obligation to receive it every week. But this is an obligation at least to touch the bread of life and to receive it once abstain from eating meat on days established by the church. And then last but not least, you have to assist the church also in her needs. Okay, well, that was a simple run through of the ecclesiastical laws. So how do you, Father, conjugate these two concepts, freedom and law? Well, the misconception, which I was actually mentioning earlier already, is that freedom is always constrained by the truth of things. Truth. Veritas liberavit, because all our movements, our behavior is always constrained by this. Okay? In that sense, inside us, we will be truly free if the law, which points us to the truth, is also followed. What goes against the law is not freedom. It is not making us achieve the good that freedom was made for. It is not leading us to the truth. Okay, this freedom is always based and always directed towards the truth, the authentic one. For example, Father, I want to fly and jump from the 4th floor, and then I tell you, no, you cannot do that. You have to go to the psychologist because you are thinking of crazy things, no? So, and then you say, nobody can tell me, well, I'm not free because I cannot fly. No, it is not definitely freedom that she is describing, but baloney, a crazy concept, no? Because it always is based on the truth. In that sense, freedom and law are not contradictions, contradicting each other. The moral law clearly requires us to correct and desire to carry out sinful actions. And in that sense, that law leads us also to the truth. It is guiding freedom. This moral guidance is not opposed to freedom, which is always directed to the free affirmation of the good. Freedom is always directed towards what is good. It has to be. Nor is it coercion of freedom. Moral guidance that the law gives always holds out the sad possibility of sinning. Okay, so sorry. The sad possibility of sinning is the freedom. No? So when the law is there, whether it's natural moral law, whether it's a civil law, it is always, if it is true, for the good of man, and therefore it is for the direction of freedom. It is not to coerce it. Okay, a well-formed person knows that in concrete cases, one should not do what one knows with certainty to be right, owing to the generality of human laws and rules, not dictating what a person should do. So a well-formed person actually will realize that many times he or she will have to decide about what exactly to do, which is no longer what many of the laws are prohibiting. Many times laws are simply to prohibit. Okay, so in this what this paragraph is saying, the laws are not really to dictate